So, heartbreaking story of Pantheon post-Ruination. Basically, what happened is in Ruination, Pantheon was defending Viego's escape to Commodore, and when Viego was sealed, Pantheon went back to normal, I'm assuming. But we'll see what happened. Okay, so this is before the call as well. Ooh. Okay, let's see what happens.
Well, rather surprising.
Shame I will be busy for about an hour or two, so I guess I won't be able to catch up or at least listen to your reactions. I'm happy that you're sad about that. Not in the sense that I'm happy that you're sad, I'm just happy that you want to see my reactions. Well, it's always gonna be on YouTube. I'm gonna be dividing the reaction to the cinematic based on each cinematic, so it's gonna be a bunch of videos, so that's always nice. And yeah, so you can always catch up there.
Surprisingly, right before Zeri, Riot also released a brand new story for Pantheon. But later we learned that this story was supposed to be released in 2021. Because Pantheon was the only one who didn't get a story that would be leading up to the cinematic. And yes, this story happens right before that. And a bit of a warning, it may hit you right in the feelings. But by far the best part of this is that once again, the story...
Oh, thank you, man. Thank you. Yes, I also love watching reactions. For some reason, I don't know what it is. It's like to see other people's opinion about something I'm watching or something like that. I don't know. It's a weird it's a weird kind of like weird kind of feeling when it's like you can argue ish with a person watching something and being like, yo, this guy is so dumb, or like, oh man, this guy knows what he's talking about because he's reacting to the same thing you're watching.
And so, here's the story about what happened to Atreus right after the Ruination. In battle, broken. Before the story begins, we get a short note written by someone from the Blessed Isles. It talks about the mysterious purpose of the Aspects. To assume the Aspects act in interest of Targon, or its people, is folly of the highest order. When the first Rakor climbed the Great Mountain, they did so to bring themselves closer to their holy sun, the divine source of all light and majesty in the world. But when they reached the summit, they found strange otherworldly beings waiting there for them. Not gods. There are no gods on the mountain nor above it. The Aspects have never claimed this, and the Rakor have never considered them as such.
The Aspects in the interest of Targon or its people's folly to the highest order. Okay. Who are the Rakor? Are those the people that live around the mountain? Summit, they found strange otherworldly beings waiting for them there. So the Aspects are not gods. Okay.
In spite of all their heavenly power, they had descended from the firmament of the celestial realm, yet were still unable to cross over into Runeterra unaided. And this was something for which they would be willing to bargain most dearly. Enough to use our worst natures against us. Enough to betray the golden sun itself. To this day, the Aspects strive to manipulate a world that is not theirs, for reasons we cannot fully comprehend, on a timescale that mocks even the grandest of mortal ambitions. However,
so I did say this before, where I didn't think the Aspects are evil or good. But this makes them look a lot worse than what they are. Pantheon is the only one who actually kills the host and takes over, basically, where Atreus became Pantheon, then when he became Pantheon, Atreus was kind of gone, he's not there anymore. Though I'm assuming right now he is, once the Aspect died. But for example, if you take Leona, if you take Diana, those Aspects didn't take over. Even Tariq, right? Those Aspects didn't take over, they just granted power. And it's it's not like they force them to do anything with that power, really. More so than they were gonna do anyways. So, okay.
However, we can be certain that their motivations are not human, and their capacity for cruelty and deception is unmatched in all existence.
Yeah.
From Tribe of the Last Sun by Hierarch Malguza of Helya. This note finally confirms a really interesting thing, that aspects are not gods, and they do in fact just come from the celestial realm, which sometimes may be referred to as Targon Prime. And it was confirmed that these aspects from the celestial realm can't pass into Runeterra, so they are using humanity for their purposes. Connected to this, I also want to mention a really interesting thing that happens later on in the cinematic. You see, I thought the gate in the cinematic was simply the gate to the very peak of Mount Targon, because the peak itself serves as a gateway to the celestial realm. But in fact, it was confirmed that gate was leading to Targon Prime directly. So whatever Atreus plans to do later on, he's ready to fight the celestial beings themselves. But now, let's get to the story. It begins on Targon, where a woman quietly enjoyed some meat.
So, Atreus is Atreus again. Did he become Atreus when Aatrox basically killed his aspect through him? Thus, if the aspect is dead, Atreus regained his consciousness? Was he like dormant inside of his body while the aspect was in control?
It was a toast to a person who wasn't with her anymore. Another young woman called Hane entered the hut and asked her,
Hane?
how was it? That's when it was revealed that this woman was none other than Iula, whom you may know from Legends of Runeterra. But more importantly, she was Pylas's wife, with...
Iula remembers the burning grief that coursed through her after she learned of her husband's death when Pantheon came to her asking if she would help him destroy a creature that feasted on this very pain. Her answer was swift. Which one was Pylas?
Being Atreus's best friend.
Oh, yeah, that's okay.
Mount Targon with him, but unlike Atreus, who
he died
into Pantheon, Pylas died there at the peak. I assume that you know the story of Pantheon and that you're keeping up. Hane then dropped 2 large sacks of grain on the floor and poured herself a cup of meat too. She sniffed it at first, then she took a long swig.
Basically, story of Pantheon. Him and Pylas climbed the mountain. Pylas died, and Atreus became Pantheon. Then, when Pantheon came down from the mountain, his parents knew that Atreus was actually dead. Because when Atreus came down, he was just Pantheon. He wasn't Atreus anymore. The parents knew he was dead. So basically, the aspect took over the body. But it seems as if Atreus was not really dead at the time. He was just dormant inside his body based on like the fact that he's now Atreus again.
She coughed 3 times before she noted that she could really taste the smoke. And she asked if the meat was always like this. Iula told her that it depends on what you put in it. Regardless, she would put in more honey before she sealed it in jars and readied it
for the markets. She'll put in more honey. Honey?
Hane remembered she saw one last honeycomb in the storehouse.
We're gonna put a bit of this honey into that honey.
Meanwhile, little Thomas, who was still seated at their table, looked at the cup in her hand and asked if he could also have some. Iula looked at him with expression of mock and confusion, before asking if he meant the lovely stew Hane made for them. Thomas shook his head and added that he meant the medu. Iula replied she didn't think that would be a good idea. Instead, she offered him some sun tea. They worked on it the entire day, and she's been looking forward to trying it.
This is like the part of the story that like, who cares? Like this interactions, like it just doesn't matter to the overall story.
Thomas wrinkled his nose and told her he didn't like sun tea anymore. That was nonsense. It was a special drink for young Rakor. It would fill him up to toe with blessings of the sun. Suddenly, the boy went quiet. His eyes sank to the table. Then why do you put your drink in the dark? He murmured. Does that mean it's bad? Iula was suddenly worried she had gone too far.
Damn.
She chuckled and
You
told
sure
him
got her.
her husband taught her how to make meat when they first married. It had to sit in the dark to give it a bit more, well, explaining fermentation to a 4-year-old was painful.
Yeah.
She then simply told him that, well, some of the best things grown-ups enjoy happen in the dark. One day, when he's older and taller, he would understand.
Again, this conversation has nothing to do with anything, but like, thanks for the lesson.
That's when the farmhouse door opened. At first, Iula was happy to see Hane was back already. But then she noticed Hane's worried expression. Someone was coming, and it seemed to be Solari. Iula strained her eyes into the distance, beyond the fields of Empyrean wheat, and true enough, she could make out a distant man, clad in dulled, broken battle plate. He was moving slowly through the crop, but there was no doubt he was coming towards the farmhouse. She steeled her nerve and walked outside.
Atreus.
"Greetings, friend," she called out. "May the sun's light be upon you. I hope your journey through the mountains has not been too hard." The man did not respond, nor hold his approach. Iula continued. "I can offer you food and water, but I'm sorry to say warriors are no longer welcome in the house that I once shared with my beloved. Perhaps you've heard of him, Bylus of the Rahora,
Oh, buddy.
worthy hero of the Solari.
Oh,
Some
bye.
40 years past. I have the
Been a
countenance of
while.
the priesthood in recognition of his service. You will find no enemies here, I assure
40
you."
years past, holy
Still,
shit.
the man did not respond. He crossed the bottom ditch. He was now barely 100 yards from the house. That's when Iula sent Hane to get her husband's sword. The girl did not move. She stared at the
Smart. Right away, bro. Man is not responding and approaching quietly. Get the fucking weapons, okay? Women, stay safe.
approaching figure. Iula shot her a serious glance and told her to get the sword above the fireplace.
Yep.
As
Get the
man
weapons.
got closer, Iula
Get the
noticed
taser.
his shield hung limply at his side, and his bent spear was dragged in the dirt behind him. She did not know why the man came, but if he meant the three of them harm, she would be ready to fight back.
Yep.
Seconds later, Hane returned, clutching the sword to her chest. The warrior was now on the path to the house. He stumbled, and Iula noticed his left sandal was flapping loosely from his bloodied foot. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. Atreus,
Thunder. Give it
the warrior
thunder.
stopped at the sound of his own name. The spear slipped from his grasp, and then he was falling. Though neither of them consciously intended it, Iula and Hane both lunged forward in a vain attempt to catch him. Some instinctive mortal reaction to seeing true divinity humbled and laid low. But of course, they could.
Like, do they recognize him because he was coming back and forth as Pantheon? Or did they recognize him from like 40 years ago? And like he didn't age or something?
Not. Atreus, once known as Pantheon and the aspect of war, crashed face first onto the flagstones. His
Made
helmet
it.
seeming to ring like a cracked temple bell as it rolled away into the dusk. The story then cuts to 4 days later, when Atreus finally woke up. Iula didn't hear him putting on the freshly washed tunic, or creeping through the passageway in the kitchen. She first knew of his recovery when the smell of burning reached her nostrils. She immediately called for Hane to get Thomas. There was smoke in the passageway. She then remembered that Hane left for the markets a few hours ago, so Iula had to deal with this herself. She turned the corner and stopped abruptly. Atreus was crouched before the bread oven in the fireplace, frantically fanning a small blaze with his shield. His eyes were raw from the smoke, his hands smeared with flour and soot. He looked over his shoulder at Iula. "Forgive me," he choked. I don't know what I... She let out a cry of exasperation and grabbed a flagon of water from the pantry. "Get out of the way, you big oaf." Steam billowed from the oven as the fire was quenched. Iula coughed and wheezed. Then she glared at the warrior standing sheepishly in the middle of the room. "What are you waiting for? Get the damn door open!" She snapped at him. Atreus opened the door, then thought
So
for a moment,
confused.
and started moving it back and forth to waft fresh air inside. Iula shot him a withering glare, before lowering herself to her knee in front of the oven. to inspect the damage. Well, that's a whole batch ruined, and the fire's dead too. It took me a whole day to get it up to the right heat, you know. She jabbed a thumb over her shoulder in Atreus' direction. I told you the last time you were here. You will never be a baker. Just give up.
Man. Sucks not having technology, I tell you. I mean, what else does she have to do in that day, really? But like, man, it sucks not having technology. It's fucked.
Continued to wave the door as if it were the most important task in the world. The girl, he murmured. She asked me to mind the bread before she left. Iula got back to her feet with some effort. You spoke to Hane? Atreus nodded. Iula noticed that Atreus would not look.
Wait a second. The fuck? Anyone else thinks something is wrong with the scar over here? What the fuck is going on with this scar? Is this a mirror image and this is the real image? Also, not just the scar, also this, right? So yeah, one of them is like in the mirror. Yeah, this also changes, yeah.
Left. Iula got back to her feet with some effort. You spoke to Hane? Atreus nodded. Iula noticed that Atreus would not look her in the eye. Instead, he kept his gaze on the floor between them. And she couldn't shake off the feeling that now he looked lesser than she remembered. He didn't radiate his stubborn defiance. Atreus then told her he wanted to find something to repay her years of kindness to him.
It's depressed.
To which Iula replied, he should probably find something outside of the kitchen. Maybe she would let him till the fields. Hopefully he wouldn't set the mud on fire. But she wouldn't be surprised if he did. A glimmer of smile crossed Atreus' face, but it was only a glimmer. He then glared to the passageway. Thomas was standing there, peering around the corner. Iula told him to come out and say hello. This was the man they've been helping. They've been friends for very, very long time, although he didn't look like it. The boy did not move, neither did Atreus. Iula sighed, trudged over and picked up the boy. Walking into the kitchen, she explained that Thomas was afraid of Atreus. He was the first soldier he had seen since he was orphaned. Atreus looked from Iula to Thomas, and back again. He is not yours? Iula laughed. Are you being serious? I'm never quite sure with you. Atreus' eyes fell to the floor again. I don't know, Atreus. I can tell you this very young boy is not my son. And before you ask, no, Hane is not my daughter either. I'm 68 years old, and I know I look it. So don't try to flatter me into forgiving you for the burned bread either. I know you don't ever seem to age, but the rest of us mortals bloody well do. She then looked directly at Atreus and saw something she had never seen before. His eyes were brimming with tears. He was trembling. She made to take a step toward him, but Thomas squirmed uncomfortably, so instead she sent him to his room. When he was gone, she continued. You've been gone for so long, she said, reaching out to place a reassuring hand on his arm. I was beginning to wonder. Atreus reacted to her touch as though struck by summer lightning. Get away from me! He bellowed, recoiling with such force he crashed over the low wooden bench and split his forehead on the corner of the table. Iula startled away, almost losing her balance as well. Atreus covered his face with one hand and tried to regain his footing. He backed into the space behind the open door and brought his knees up like a wall between him and the rest of the world. Don't touch me, don't touch me, don't touch me. He repeated again and
The fuck went on with his brain? Holy fuck, man.
See him physically broken. But Iula knew now that the wounds he must recently have suffered ran far deeper than his flesh. And that hurt her more than anything else she could imagine. She folded her arms tightly across her chest, sobbing gently, grasping the fabric of her smock, and sank down to sit opposite him on the floor. They sat there for some time. Iula said nothing for a long while. Eventually, she asked, "What happened to you, old friend?" I don't know. I don't really remember. What do you remember? Do you recall the last time you were here? The last time we saw each other? He frowned a little. I think so. How long ago was it? 6 years, Atreus. I haven't seen you in 6 years.
6 years. That means most likely after Aatrox stabbed him, right? And killed the aspect? Because I didn't look at the Aatrox story. It's kind of like self-explanatory, so it's like I didn't, but it's like, you know, these small details kind of can be confusing. I'm assuming this is after Aatrox stabbed him and he's already Atreus.
Her words seemed to hang in the air longer than she had intended. She watched him attempt to process them in light of whatever it was he wanted to tell her. I think I went back to the peak, he murmured. I think I climbed the mountain again. Iula's eyes widened. But I know, it shouldn't be possible, and yet, there it is. It was beyond anything she had ever considered. Certainly, there were legends that predated even the empire of Shurima, of climbers who reached the summit of Mount Targon and yet were claimed by no aspect, who then managed against all odds to make their way back down and return to their people, whether in shame or triumph. It was often unclear in the telling, and usually considered nothing more than fanciful allegory. But the notion that any mortal, even an aspect host, might make the climb twice? It was unheard of. She laughed, clapping her open palm on the floor. My old friend, she beamed. If ever someone was going to rewrite the rules of the world, it would be you. Atreus shook his head, and Iula felt all the levity fade away. No, he replied. It wasn't me. Then who? Viego. Even though she had never heard it before that moment, the name sent a shudder through her. She did not like to think that words, or names, could have power over the living. Maybe it was simply the way Atreus had spoken it, his gaze haunted and thin. Viego, the ancient king who brought the black mist to our lands. I tried to fight him, but he... Atreus rubbed absently at his scalp. He made me his puppet, Iula. I think I have done some terrible, terrible things. Iula was numb. She and Hane had not dared to imagine what foes could have blunted the weapons and armor of an aspect, but now she wondered, had they even been foes at all? I'm sorry. I know how hard it was for you to be controlled by the Pantheon all those years ago. This must have been... Oh, Atreus. I'm so truly sorry for what has happened to you, my friend. She reached out to him again. This time he did not flinch. Oh, Atreus, she said again, and took him in her arms, rocking gently back and forth with him on the kitchen floor. Close to tears herself, Iula closed her eyes. Tell me what you need, old friend, she whispered. Whatever I can do for you, I will. You know that. Atreus took a deep breath to steady himself. I need you to tell me it's okay to give up, he replied. Iula felt suddenly cold. What? There is too much evil in the world. You and I have both seen it. I have fought it for so long. I can't remember what came before, but I'm tired. I'm so damn tired, Iula. How can mortals hope to win against undying kings or fallen god warriors? The aspects and their slaves, demons from the spirit realm, Runeterra is becoming their playground. I thought all I needed was to keep getting back up, no matter what. But if I can be made an enemy too, then simply being able to endure is no longer enough.
What does this remind me of? Sanctuary in Diablo. Basically. Even though obviously it has less threats, like it doesn't have like Undying Kings, well, kinda, Fallen God and all that stuff. It really has angels and demons. Demons basically control the undead and stuff like that. But it's like Sanctuary became the playground for, or like ground zero for the conflict between heaven and hell. So, kinda, yeah. Okay, so Atreus is losing his hope in what he can do, regardless of being an aspect or not. Is that basically what it is? Because he can be made a slave.
He gritted his teeth
Huh?
and looked her dead in the
Well,
eye.
slave to the aspects or slave to the undead, right? Basically.
Worst of all, I lost whatever power I still held after my aspect was slain.
Yeah.
Viego must have seen to that. Whatever it was that connected me to the celestial realm, it's gone. I'm just a man. So I need to tell me that it's okay for me to leave all this behind. You're the only person Iula pushed him away and clambered shakily to her feet. Adrenaline surged in her veins. She saw this wasn't just the absence of his comforting defiance.
She's about to tell him, stop being a little bitch, listen to Andrew Tate, get yourself back together, and climb up that mountain for the 3rd time, motherfucker.
Which for so many years had made her feel safer, just knowing that he was out there, somewhere in the world.
Here's some Andrew Tate motivational videos for you.
Given up.
Yeah.
How dare you? She murmured.
Oh, buddy.
Atreus rose, confused, towering over.
Of course, bro. You're disrespecting her husband's memory, bro. You have no right to give up because reasons.
He wiped his face with the back of his forearm. I don't understand. How dare you?
Yup.
Iula shrieked. How can you even think to ask that? He faltered, his fists clenching involuntarily. I can't do this anymore. Please. A sour taste rose in the back of her throat. Her anger was so fierce, so hot, that she couldn't even feel the floor beneath her feet anymore. Damn you! She spat. Damn you, coward! How dare you say that to me? Iula, please, listen to... She slapped him, hard, across the face.
Ah, damn.
He did not try to defend himself.
Of course
but
not.
Only stared down at her.
But it's only a slap from a woman. I mean, like, he don't even need defense.
Dumbfounded, his cheek reddening quickly.
Yeah.
Iula could not weep. She was too enraged. He loved you, Atreus.
Yep.
Pylus loved you more than any brother. He was my husband. But he went with you up that accursed mountain, even though I begged him not to. He was mine, and you lost him up there.
Feel like I don't think Atreus convinced Pylus to go with him, though. Pylus went because Pylus wanted to go, right? It wasn't like he's just going there because of Atreus. He was gonna go there regardless, maybe.
She let out a
But whatever, gotta blame somebody, you know.
Her nails into her forearms. You got to hold him, Atreus. You got to hold him as he died. And what did I get? She pointed to the mantle where Pylus's blade hung. I got a sword, nothing more. Iula squared her jaw and looked up into the open sky she imagined beyond the ceiling beams. Don't you dare tell me about what you have lost and how you can't go on anymore.
Wow. This is extremely unfair, by the way. I mean, I'm sorry. He probably lost... First of all, he lost his best friend. You lost a husband, yeah. I would say that's almost equal, you know. It's not like you had a kid from him. You know, he's been fighting for... He lost himself. Don't forget that. He also lost himself. So he lost his best friend and he lost himself for years. Up until Aatrox stabbed him, basically. So I think he lost more. And then he lost himself again after tasting the freedom. You know, he lost himself again to be a complete puppet to fucking Viego. Like, I don't know, man. I think he lost more than you. But at the same time, double standards, bro. Men have to perform. You don't get to retire. You only get to sleep. What was the saying in like that stupid song? I'll sleep when I'm dead. Yeah, it's like, that's it, Pantheon. That's it, Atreus. You can only sleep when you die.
Or you don't get to retire. You don't have that option. This isn't about you. It never has been.
True.
I helped you because that's what Pylus would have wanted. I even tried to become a soldier and follow you on the battlefield after he was gone. He died for you. So you could become something greater than any Rahurak, greater than any mortal. Atreus shook his head.
A slave.
Exasperated, she stomped to the fireplace and snatched down the blade.
Yeah, he died for nothing.
And pressing it to Atreus's heart in one sweep motion. Then we don't need you. We may as well let the aspects have their war, and let that be the end of everything.
It's fucking crazy, bro. This bitch is crazy. Pylus, you dodged a bullet.
The tip of the sun-tempered steel parted the threads of his tunic and drew a trickle of blood from his breast. He looked down at the small crimson spot, slowly spreading across the fabric. Then he looked back at Iula. What war? He asked, his voice sounding weak. She tightened her grip on the sword, realizing only then that she did not know how she expected this to end. The Solari, Atreus. They see heresy everywhere, and they are not just killing anyone they suspect of being Lunari, but anyone suspected of harboring them too.
Wait, why the Solari again? Didn't, like, Leona and Diana make out or some shit? What the fuck is going on?
Unable to take a hand off the hilt, she nodded instead toward the open passageway. Thomas isn't our settlement. The Rahorak butchered them. This is what happens when aspects cloak themselves in mortal superstition. Your former brethren have been driven into the darkness by the blinding light of their new savior. Something like recognition flickered across Atreus' features, as if he were trying to recall a fading dream. And the aspect of the moon, of course. She has not yet stepped forward to lead the Lunari. How much worse will it get once she does? You swore that you would stand against them, Atreus. That you would not let this world's fate be decided by such inhuman monsters, even when they choose to do nothing. I'm sorry for what has happened to you. I truly am. But I cannot let you break your oath. Not now.
Okay, fair enough.
Atreus slowly, deliberately closed the fingers of his right hand around the sword blade. Killing either the aspect of the sun or moon will not end the conflict in Targon, just like the death of war did not lead to eternal peace. Shut up. Stop trying to justify what you want, and do what you know you should. That little boy was absolutely terrified of you when you arrived, and yet he wanted to wear your helm and pick up your spear from the moment he saw them. If you won't act now, then that's the only future he has, growing up to fight and die like too many Rakor before him. She forced as much conviction into her voice as she could muster. You need to get back up, Atreus. I didn't want to be a widowed farmer. I didn't want to inherit all this. I had to give up my life and my love. So now you need to prove you're worthy of the faith my husband had in you. You need to honor the sacrifices we have all made. You need to stop the aspects from destroying our people entirely.
But, like, why? Why are the Solari even doing that, though? Is it similar to, like, in World of Warcraft, there's this, the Maghar Orc quest. To get Maghar Orcs unlocked, you go back to Draenor, and you have, like, the light fanatics there, and who just, like, convert everyone, and if you refuse to convert to the light, they basically kill you. Is this basically a similar thing? They're just, the Solari just converting everyone and killing everyone who's Lunari? Still don't know why, because the aspects themselves, the Solari and the Lunari aspects, are friendly as far as I know. They're sisters, aren't they?
Atreus gripped Iula's leading hand, gently urging her to drive the blade onward, his expression resolute. I can't.
Kill me.
He whispered, his voice cracking.
End my life.
Strong enough. That was it. Iula was done.
Snap.
She threw down the sword and barged past him, heading for Thomas's room. Well, if you're just going to lay down and die, please pass my love to my husband when you see him. She yelled over her shoulder before scooping up the startled child and hurrying out of the farmhouse in tears. She did not look back to see if Atreus was following them.
Say hi to my husband when you see him.
Asked. Iula winced as her bare feet were cut raw on the stony path.
Yeah, like, seriously.
We're going to cut some more firewood, my boy. She managed a smile. We're going to bake bread again today.
Okay.
When they returned, Atreus was gone. Iula ignored the handwritten note that had been carefully placed beside Pylas' sword on the kitchen table and went to close the door. Telling herself she was merely looking out for Hane on her way back from market, she scanned the distant trackways that led up and out the valley.
Is Hane dead? We haven't seen Hane in a while. Did she die?
But saw no sign of anyone. She took a deep breath to calm herself, letting it out slowly as she walked back to the fireplace and knelt before the cold oven with a grunt of discomfort. Then, without reading it, she balled up the note and stuffed it into the grate, and began to hum an old song from her youth as she stacked fresh kindling on top. She genuinely hoped that would not be the last time she saw her old friend, that he would find his way out of the shadows, for all their sakes, by whatever path he had chosen. But until then, she would sharpen her husband's blade, and prepare to meet whatever was still to come. And that was the amazing story called In Battle, Broken.
Bro, people say this is like an emotional story and shit. It's like, it's fine, I guess. Truly shows what makes Atreus an incredibly well-written character. In game you see him at his best, confident, strong, but here we see the wounds of a man's mind behind all the strength, a true test of his character. It makes me root for him even more for when he inevitably has to rise up once more, as Pantheon always does. I don't know. It's a cool story, but like I wouldn't call this very emotional. It's like whatever. But yeah, anyways, now it's time for the big one. Let's go.